What up, perps? Kid Copious back in effect. Purple State Party. You know what we're doing here. We're repping America, the center, and common sense. And this Fetty Pot Cannon, this is for all you supportive parents. 1, 2, 3, 4. Through you, we can do a lot more. Ha, a little rhyme time. But no, when I talk about supportive parents, I'm not just talking about parents who support gay, lesbian, or trans kids. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, the parents of a girl with a beautiful voice, and they want her to be a singer, but she wants to be an architect. Or the athletic family who wants their boy to play sports, but he rather look through his telescope and study the stars. I went through that. My own daughter, she's super smart, super good at arguments. I thought, lawyer. It's not what she wants to do. And that's not what she's good at. And when I see her do something she's good at that puts a smile on her face, I know that's the right answer. It's not about just blindly supporting your kid. No, there's work involved. You need to guide, you need to provide advice, solutions, things like that. But you have to encourage. Parents, it's a bigger job than people give it credit for, I guess. Through parents, that's where love and hate is spread. There is nothing worse than being hated by your parents. That's got to be one of the shittiest feelings in the world. Some of my internet children out there, they may feel that they were let down by their parents. But, some random stranger here in America who barely even knows you, talks to you through the internet. I got love for you. I got respect for you. I see the struggles that you are enduring and overcoming. And I encourage you to continue that hard work. It ain't easy out there, folks. And it doesn't necessarily ever get better. But you will get stronger. And that's the message that we need to be giving our kids. To avoid the hate, especially the hate for oneself. You are special in your uniqueness. You have your own path. And we as parents, we have to respect the child's ability to pick their path. A lot of times that's just what comes naturally to them. You got to look for that. And for God's sakes, even if your kid makes a decision that you disagree with, still give them a big hug. Because losing your support is losing hope. And once you lose hope, all that's left is despair. Cue the Danganronpa thing. Now for some mental irregularities. Well, I guess if you're going to do political YouTube, I guess one of the first milestones you must pass is getting your first video removed. Mine was removed. Oddly enough, episode 66, just for the continuum, I'm on 163 right now. So, almost 2 years ago. Whatever. I'm not even going to argue it because, to me, it is what it is. If you think my opinion crossed your line, fine, I crossed your line, whatever. I'm not going to get into this whole free speech bullshit. Because we know they have the right to do whatever they want. I would hope that they would make decisions based on free speech, but, whatever. So my opinion crossed the line. Yeah. Okay. Speaking of crossing the line, Schwarzenegger filled a pothole that was actually an important hole, which is a weird way of saying it, but apparently Southern California Edison or the Grass Company had dug somewhat of a trench to do some work, and people were complaining about it, so Schwarzenegger went out and filled it. I mean, I'll give him credit, This is a guy I heckled at a baseball game once. I don't like his policies. I don't like the way he governed necessarily. He wasn't the best. He wasn't the worst, whatever. Yeah. I mean, that's just a funny story. Here's a great update right here. Sam Britton, the non-binary cross-dressing DOE employee, sentenced to 180 days. in his porch pirating, stealing luggage. You know, my personal opinion on that was, quite simple, that, these so-called equity hires or whatever are ridiculous because you're not getting qualified people. And I guess in this case, it really blew up in the Biden administration's face. And to be honest, it's just kind of a funny story. Whew. Dairy farm exploded in Texas. 18,000 cattle were killed. It's a lot of free burgers raining down. They don't really know what happened. Who knows? I think it's a dangerous world nowadays because I'm probably not allowed to speculate on some of the things that could have happened, but let's just wait and find out. But, this is one of the problems we face right now with farming and some of our manufacturing, is that as costs go up, companies are cutting costs. Maybe certain things that should have been upgraded weren't upgraded. Maybe that led to it. But we are having a lot of these train derailments and plant explosions and plant fires. But it is spicy times, man. We had a tornado in LA. So, I mean, it's freaking crazy out there. So, this is my new little feature, this week in Bonta Talk. And again, I don't disagree with what he's doing here. He's forming a Victims of Consumer Fraud Restitution Fund. But at the end, he says, true justice cannot be served when victims are left behind. This bill would help make sure they're not. Of what? Consumer fraud? I mean, where are your priorities, buddy? You think that protecting us from the mean, evil corporations is first and foremost, when it's not. What are you doing about fentanyl? What are you doing about fentanyl? You do everything about guns, and then fentanyl kills twice as many people, and you do nothing about it. And speaking of guns, you do nothing about criminals who use guns. You don't use those enhancements. You don't hit them with everything you could. There are places that have 5-10-year minimum sentences for using guns. If you really want to clean up the streets and deal with gun crime and gun control and all that, then why don't you make criminals scared to even be around a gun? But instead, you're going to worry about the victims of consumer fraud. That's great. But you and your DAs around this state are leaving victims behind every single day in criminal cases. That's what I'm calling out. Bravo, you're going to protect them from consumer fraud. That's a great thing, buddy. But it should be about like 7th or 8th on your list. Speaking of people saying stupid ass shit, yeah, I get it. I understand. Conservative women in general, they could feel a little bit offended by how Dylan Mulvaney characterizes girlhood. You could. That's fine. I mean, she did go out hiking in heels. That is a bit of a parody. It could be offensive. But then to follow it up saying, he will always be a man. You don't need to add that. You could celebrate your womanhood without diminishing another human being. Like this shit. Bomb threats made to Budweiser factory after transgender promotion controversy. This is going to lead me into my main subject this week. I try to speak about common sense. I let that kind of be my judge. It kind of dictates where I'm going to go. I'm going to try to follow that common sense. Maybe I don't agree with it. Maybe I don't understand it. But something that makes sense to me. Now, with Budweiser, where is the offense coming from? What is it that you're complaining about? Well, this kind of sums it up. Stop promoting transgender ideology. Conservatives react to Bud Light's return to Twitter. See, it's just about Dylan being a trans female. That's your complaint. There's no logic behind it. There's no common sense behind it. Who is she hurting? No one. Maybe you're a little bit offended by the way Dylan portrays girlhood, but hey, come on. You know, you're a big girl. You could take it. You know, and then they want to try to cloud the issue here, saying, this Heitner. Why does everybody have to have names I can't pronounce? Okay, Alyssa. So Alyssa says she plans to update Bud Light's frat image, but yet she engaged in frat image at her time at Harvard. Okay, so people change. So what? So they're trying to reach another market. I remember when I was a kid and I was really confused because I was watching a Dodger game and they were playing in Atlanta, and the Braves fans were holding up signs that had the Union 76 logo on it, the gas station 76. And I'm like, wait a minute, why are they sponsoring the Braves? They sponsor the Dodgers. Well, corporations sponsor lots of people. Do you get mad if you go in and you see the Bud Light is got an advertisement that features, let's say, the Los Angeles Rams, but you're like me and you're a Patriots fan? No, I don't. They just sponsor who they sponsor. So your only complaint about this really is who they're sponsoring. Budweiser came out and said, we never intended to be part of a discussion that divides people. We're in the business of bringing people together over a beer. Again, you could say, you can make the argument, I don't know why they were trying to market Bud Light to that particular community. But it's just, that's up to them. If that's where they want to advertise, that's where they're going to advertise. If you don't like it, fine. But just know that you're not reacting to it out of any sort of grandiose motivation. It's just hatred. That's all it is. This one really got me. Bud Light fiasco should wake up corporate America to drop all wokery. Now, okay. So let's talk about wokery here, Wokery needs to have, being woke, or woke as sort of a derogatory term, needs to have some illogicalness. That's not a word, but some insanity behind it. A bit of it where you just go, wait a minute, that's no longer common sense. Okay? That's just stupid. California, a free state, talking about reparations. That's woke. We were a free state. We didn't profit off of slavery. That doesn't mean we can't think that slavery was abhorrent and regret the past that America shares. But at the same time, we're not a southern state. If a southern state wants to talk about reparations, okay, maybe you could say, well, these people weren't actually slaves. Who are you paying money to? Blah, 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 blah. But that ain't woke. Because there's not this absurd notion like California being a free state. Going back to the Budweiser thing, where is that insanity to advertising to Dylan Mulvaney and her fans? There's no insanity. It's just a beer. Anybody could have a beer. Dylan having a beer does not stop anybody from having a beer. Ridiculous. But this article, which was somewhat just one-sided and bizarre, does make sense when they say that campuses and the cultural elite may be deep in woke delusions, but business leaders need to keep their grip on reality. Okay, that makes sense. But again, how did Budweiser really violate that? They didn't. If you are against Bud Light right now, you are against them simply because somebody is transgender. And that's transphobic. And we don't need that shit. We don't. It's a little bit different when you talk about Nike. Now, Nike, with their sports bra campaign with Dylan, that's a little bit different. Right now, trans females, athletics, all of that, it is a soup of confusion. And people are getting hurt. And people's rights are being violated to give other people some rights. Allowing a biological male into the women's locker room simply because the biological male identifies as a woman, or putting them in a prison, is ludicrous. And for Nike to kind of jump into that fire just to get a little publicity for free, yeah, that is that wokery. That's why I oppose it. Why is it not at least... I would much rather see Leah Thomas, an actual trans athlete, pose with the sports bra. That at least makes some sense. Or just a female athlete. Because again, you're going with somebody famous, you're a sports brand. Shouldn't that famous person be a famous athlete? That sort of makes sense. Megan Rapinoe, Sue Bird, fine. That all makes perfect sense. It's not necessarily because Dylan's trans. It's because Dylan is not an athlete. See? There's a difference. There is a difference. The same thing is going on with Riley Gaines. The students in San Francisco are slamming the university for providing security to Riley Gaines. Riley Gaines, who was assaulted, okay, and was held hostage inside a room while the protesters demanded money. And now the same students are saying, oh, they shouldn't have provided security. Really? Why? She doesn't have rights? All of a sudden, we can just throw them out. The president of San Francisco State University called Gaines's appearance deeply traumatic for many in our trans and LGBTQ plus communities while praising the protesters. Why? She wasn't saying that they can't compete in sports. She was saying that biological males shouldn't be allowed to compete in female sports. At some point, we need to be able to recognize where we have to allow biology, science, that kind of stuff to enter into this argument. And to not say that everybody who speaks for keeping it, exclusively for women is being transphobic, because they're not. I mean, they're simply not. There are plenty of examples where you could see they need to be separated. So the president went on to say that Gaines was just trying to get likes and get clicks by speaking out on the issue of women's sports. And, one of her supporters responded with, all I've ever seen her do is stand up for women's rights and fairness and equality. She actually competed against Leah Thomas, and it was obviously unfair. And it was. In a contest of fractions of seconds, the fact that Leah has long, super long arms is a huge advantage. Super long frame that went through puberty. But again, this is arguing on the biological nature of these people. Not who they are, not simply because Leah Thomas is trans, because I don't care about that. It's the fact that everybody just rushed to say, you know what? We're just going to consider you this. We're not going to put up any guidelines. We're not going to try to figure out what would be fair for women and for trans women. No, we're just going to side with one side and run with it. And if that's allowed to continue, it can significantly damage women's sports. Maybe right now, there's only a few instances, but every year that goes by, we know there's going to be an increase. We sat around on the fence about the homeless populations in Los Angeles, tried to show compassion, tried to pass laws so that they could just live their lives. And now look where it is in most cities. You have entire areas in places like Portland, Seattle, Los Angeles, where it's just miserable to live. It's miserable to live and work there. That's just a simple fact. Sitting around does not solve problems. College congratulates students who assaulted speaker. Yeah, calling it peaceful. There they go again. They held her hostage, requested money to let her go. And somehow that's a peaceful protest. And what is she protesting for? She wasn't trying to kick them out of sports altogether. She was promoting the fact that we do have an issue right now that needs to be settled with common sense. Yeah. Diversity promotes critical discussions. No, it doesn't. The problem is we know it now with diversity is a one-sided conversation. There is no opinions. It's you believe this or not. Look at that. She went on to say, it took tremendous bravery to stand in a challenging space. I'm proud of the moments where we listened and asked insightful questions. I'm also proud of the moments when our students demonstrated the value of free speech and the right to protest peacefully. Well, isn't that nice that they've deemed, yelling and screaming at this woman free speech? Yeah. And as we see, free speech does not go across the board. America does not necessarily embrace that. Corporations shut it down on a daily. But if you're saying the right thing for the right side, then you can say whatever you want and do whatever you want. It's a good quote by Riley here. We're backed by science, we're backed by logic and reason, quite frankly, common sense. The other side, they don't have that. And they don't. They don't. When we're talking about athletics, prisons, shelters, there has to be room to recognize the biological differences. And when people like Rapinoe comes out, or Sue Bird comes out, they're hailed as heroes. Well, they have nothing to risk. They can just sign up on this because their jobs aren't in jeopardy. The head of San Francisco State University athletics director is blaming gender bias for why people are upset that men are competing in female sports. What? That lady Hawkins, she also said that it has to do with America's competitive nature. She's the head of athletics. And there is a gender bias. Yeah, you can make the argument that somebody like the legendary Rowdy Ronda Rousey, she could beat up a guy. Yeah, but you put her in with an equally trained male in the same weight class, she would get destroyed. Those are just facts. That's not based on any form of hatred. That's just a fact. Yeah, Tim Young, I don't often agree with him, but sometimes he says something that's really interesting. Megan Rapinoe and the leftist women who complain that women don't get paid as much as men in sports now argue for men to take women's places in sports. Yeah, I don't see why that is so impossible for people to understand. That at the end of the day, sometimes biology has to enter into it. That's just the truth. When you're making rules and you're discussing one group's rights versus another group's rights, you have to be able to consider the reality of that situation. And when it comes to sports, there is a reason why we have a men's and a women's team. And that just needs to be preserved. The male category could be open. If Leah Thomas just wants to swim, then she could swim on the men's team or the open team. Or she could have changed in another locker room and been a little more accommodating towards the rights of the women. That's possible. But at the end of the day, it's an unfair advantage. It's an exploitable situation. These were just some of the funny ones that came out. Riley Gaines arrested for making trans activist assault her. I'm a victim, yells trans activist while punching woman in the face. Not too long ago, women were the victims. I just hate to bring that up. This is my favorite of the stupidity. Parents just relieved teen who came home drunk wasn't drinking Bud Light. And again, that's a funny joke, but what is the real problem with the Bud Light thing? Yeah, this was Nike tells customers, be kind, be inclusive. Hey, that's fine. You shouldn't be out there throwing hate around. There's a logical argument to what Nike did and why it was stupid. But if you're going to throw hate around, then you're on the wrong side of it. And speaking on the wrong side of it, Chris Tyson, Mr. Beast's sidekick, has been going through hormone replacement therapy. He's his friend, gender-affirming care, and admitted it saved their life. I'm not going to sit here and argue whether it did or not. I'm not a doctor. I've never heard that it doesn't save lives. So certainly can't argue that. So that's what Chris looked like. And you can see Chris on the end there. But he said informed consent Hormone replacement therapy saved my and many others' lives. Just let people make informed decisions. Again, that's one of the things I preach here. Let's not do it with our blinders on. Let's go for a zero regret policy. Let's make sure that kids that are undergoing, hormone therapies and things like that are doing it with eyes wide open. But instead, what you get is a lot of people chiming in saying that, oh, now his kid won't have a father, blah, blah, blah. He's going to ruin the kid's life. Just throwing out hatred. I get it. I understand that some people might have been taken aback by that. Maybe that's not something that they would do themselves. But who the hell gives you the right to judge? It's their life. It's their life, and they should be allowed to make those decisions. It's not affecting anybody. And if you say it's affecting his kid, then you're just being transphobic. You're just coming from a place of hate. And meanwhile, while we're all being so distracted by all of these, stories that affect a few people, the entire world should be watching what China's doing. Because they are the true enemy here. Dylan Mulvaney? Nah. That's a drop in the bucket, folks. China's gearing up to start taking over new territories. Things that it wants. It wants into the semiconductor business. So it's going to go after Taiwan. We're going to see a little more of that in a second. Gavin Newsom denounces Republic tyranny. Meanwhile, a church is fined $1.2 million for trivial violations. You can't make this stuff up. He's out there with his slick back hair, setting himself up for a run for president, claiming that California is a state where freedom reigns. Look, if you're defining freedom by gender-affirming care and abortion, then sure, California is where freedom reigns. But almost every other freedom, no. We are pretty restricted out here. We are constantly being told what we can't. I mean, you can't even buy menthol cigarettes out here anymore, or flavored vape, and lots of other products. They're trying to take my Skittles away. Newsom is being so slick that he's promoting Trump because he sees Trump as the weaker Republican candidate. That's how slimy this guy is. It's not about what's good for the country. It's not about having a plan that will work, a plan that will bring us back together and make us stronger. No, it's about getting elected. I'm just going to go skipping through some of this. That's all boring. Yeah, China carrying out Taiwan invasion dry run by cutting internet cables. And that's what they're doing. That's how it works. They have a ship, positions itself over the internet cable, drops the anchor cuts the cable. Why? Because they need to isolate them from the rest of the world. Taiwan, somewhat free. China, not so much. Biden's war on fossil fuels will destroy communities. Oddly enough, this comes from the U.S. Federal Reserve Board and the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco. And they're looking at what happened in the Appalachian coal region. And that's where we're heading. And one of their concerns is that retraining and relocation programs historically have had poor success rates among blue-collar workers. And one thing that I've kind of seen along the way here is that lots of people with purple in their heart have blue on their collar. Because they see things a different way. That's me. I'm a blue-collar guy. I see things a different way. I see how policies affect people from the top to the bottom. Because I see the bottom. I see the middle. I see and hear their stories. But he doesn't even care. The conclusion onto why they're going to do this with all the damage that it will cause. Not just to people who are out of work, but the surrounding communities. Because these people, the people who are out of work, don't have money to spend in the stores. Then the stores start to close. And the only reason to keep doing this is that they don't care about the common people nearly as much as they do about kneeling before the hysterical altar of global warming. That is their God right now. The extreme left is the Democrats' God. And that's why you hear me speak out against them. The Republicans can simply change the laws they've passed. I don't think the damage that Biden and his policies are doing can be undone quite as easily. I heard that armed security schools would save more children's lives. Shh, that would ruin a great campaign issue. That's all, that's what I want out of my politicians. I don't want them to continue going with the sign they're waving around. I want them to go with common sense. If we need to come up with some sort of plan to secure our schools better, then we should fucking do it. Kids should not have to go to school and worry about getting shot up. All right? And that's not the gun's fault. All right? It's society's fault. We are creating monsters, and then we're leaving the castle doors wide open for these monsters to go in and kill innocent children. Close the goddamn castle door. Instead of bashing Trump, why don't you post what you love about the Democratic Party? Yeah, this one got me thinking. What do I love about the Democrats? Well, I like their stance on weed, and I believe in gay and lesbian and trans rights and rights for everybody. Other than that, it's very difficult to say anything else. They are more forward thinking in terms of, progressing with the times. But other than that, man, I don't know. And when they go to that much effort to get Trump, it really scares me. They really do seem like they are trying to seize ultimate power. And again, that's why you hear more about them. I think a lot of Republican values are just being left on the side of the road now when it comes to the stuff that I don't like. But, again, this current regime wouldn't put fentanyl on the list. The last regime wouldn't remove weed from the list. I mean, it's really hard, folks. It's really hard. But we can't just sit there and just keep blaming the last president for things. It's not the way it works. This is a shitty week. This was the best of the week for me. Something about crypto is a scam. I don't know. I'm bored of the whole crypto thing. It's not where I would invest. I'm more of a, safe long-term investor, real estate, bonds, things like that. I don't think day trading in crypto is really for everybody. I know some people made money off of crypto, but, people make money off Ponzi schemes. They make money off pyramid schemes. It's the people at the bottom that get fleeced. I hope you had some fun there. Hope we learned something. Please, like, subscribe. We'll multiply. This isn't about me. This isn't about trying to make a name for myself on YouTube. This is a man who believes passionately in the idea of purple. I'm sick and tired of having to make these compromises when the compromises are not helping at all. They're not getting us anywhere. I want to protect the environment, but the way we're going about it is completely wrong. I want to be a strong nation that's built on unity and understanding. But as we're seeing nowadays, we can't discuss things. We're not allowed to voice our opinions. They need to conform, and that's a dangerous sign. And right now, we are looking at, as it stands, I think, 4 really, favorite candidates. You got your Newsom, and you got your Biden, and you got your Trump, and you got your DeSantis. And they all kowtow to the extremes. I hate the extremes. I represent the middle. I don't favor right-wing extremists over left-wing extremists. I think they're both extremists. And we need to pull to the middle. Every day, we inch closer to the next time we can elect people. If we have to put up with another 4 years of partisan, extreme policies, we're screwed. We're screwed. This is a very, very important time right now for people to start thinking, who is the least extreme person out there? That's what we need to figure out. I'm Kid Copious. I'm Purple State. And so are you. Keep loving your heart, man. If you got kids, try to be supportive. And nothing brings people together more than dancing it out. Yeah. Get sexy on it.